So we gotta push them whenever you wanna speak. Yeah, so it's on now.
Good evening. I call to order this regular joint meeting of the Minnehaha County and Sioux Falls Planning Commissions, and I will begin with a few introductory comments. My name is Bonnie Duffy, and I'm the chair for the Minnehaha County Planning and Zoning, and Janet Kiddams is here for the City Planning and Zoning. As a courtesy to everyone here tonight, please make sure that all cell phones have been silenced. Please note that tonight's Planning Commission meeting will be rebroadcast via CityLink and posted on the www.minnehahacounty.org site for viewing by the general public. The two planning commissions work together on land use and zoning matters within the rural area surrounding the city. This area is displayed on the screen. When this joint hearing is completed, the joint Sioux Falls and County Planning Commission will adjourn, and the next regular business meeting will begin to consider items beyond the joint zoning jurisdiction with Sioux Falls. Any final action taken on the conditional use permit applications tonight will take effect 5 working days following this meeting unless a written appeal of the Planning Commission's decision is filed in the Planning Office by Tuesday, July 31st at 5 p.m. In the event of an appeal, the decision will be referred to the County Commission and the City Council for a joint hearing on Tuesday, August 22nd at or after 5 p.m. Joint meetings of the County Commission and the City Council are held at Carnegie Town Hall, and that is at 235 West 10th Street. Action taking on the zoning application during the public hearing tonight is a recommendation that will be forwarded to the County Commission and City Council for another public hearing on Tuesday, August 22nd at or after 5 p.m. Joint meetings of the County Commission and City Council are held in Carnegie Town Hall, and that's located at 235 West 10th Street. Action taking on the zoning text amendment during the public hearing tonight is a recommendation that will be forwarded to the County Commission and City Council for another public hearing on Tuesday, August 22nd at or after 5 p.m. Joint meetings of the County Commission and City Council are held in the Carnegie Town Hall at 235 West 10th Street. First on the agenda is public input. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? At this time, the Planning Commission will consider the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are perceived to be non-controversial and meet all of the requirements of the codes and regulations. The consent agenda will be acted on in one motion with no public hearing on the items unless a member of the public, the commission, or staff requests the item be removed from the consent agenda. The minutes from the June 26, 2023 meeting are included in the consent agenda. Next, I'll read each item on the consent agenda and ask if there are any issues or comments from the Planning Commission or the audience. If any member of the Planning Commission or the audience would like to be heard on the item, please raise your hand and the item will be moved to the regular agenda to allow you to address the commission later in the meeting. Any items remaining on the consent agenda will be approved by the Planning Commissions with the conditions recommended by staff. Item number 1 is the approval of the minutes of the June 26, 2023 meeting. And item number 2 is conditional use permit 23-32 to allow a mini storage facility on the property legally described as Part Track 4. There is the exception of H-1, end of exception, Lot 7, Pleasant View Acres, north half, southeast quarter, and the south half, northeast quarter, Section 19, Township 101 North, Range 48 West. That is located in Split Rock Township. Petitioner is Dutch Dirt LLC. They're also the property owner. It's located at 1002 South Hillside Drive.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
A second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any further questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved on the county side.
All right, on the city side, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So made.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Those opposed, same sign. All right, our motion carries.
Okay, we'll move on to the regular agenda. Item number 3 is conditional use permit 23-13 to allow a public utility facility as a collector well on the property that is described as tract 1 and 2. There's exception of H-1, end of exception, northeast quarter, southwest quarter, section 29, township 102 north, range 49 west. That is in Mapleton Township. Petitioner and property owner is the city of Sioux Falls and is located north of Sioux Falls along North Ditch Road. Mason?
Good evening, Commissioners. Mason Steffen from the County Planning Office. I'll just go through a quick update on this item just so we're aware of what's currently going on. So this item was originally scheduled to be heard at the April 24th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. At that meeting, the state's attorney's office notified staff that a public utility facility is not a listed conditional use within the RC Recreation Conservation Zoning District. Therefore, the item was deferred 3 months to this meeting in order to allow staff to amend the joint zoning ordinance to add public utility facility within the RC zoning district. However, after the item was deferred, the city of Sioux Falls elected to move forward with annexing the property so that they could begin construction earlier than this permit would allow. And that annexation resolution was included for your review. So therefore, since the property is annexed within the city of Sioux Falls, the only action that should be taken tonight is for the commission to acknowledge the withdrawal of this permit request since it is in the city limits of Sioux Falls.
Any questions for him? Okay, I'll consider a motion for the withdrawal.
I move acknowledgement of the withdrawal of the application for conditional use permit 23-13.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for the withdrawal of conditional use permit 23-13. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The withdrawal passes on the county side.
All right, on the city side, I would entertain a motion to withdraw item number 3, the conditional use permit.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to acknowledge withdrawal of CUP 2313. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 4 is rezoning of 23-05 to rezone from A1 Agricultural District to the C Commercial District. The property legally described as Lot 1 and Lot 2 of Sunderman's Addition, South Half, Southeast Quarter, Section 26, Township 102 North, Range 50 West. That is in Benton Township. Petitioner is Tad Fegan. Property owner is Highway 38, Sunderman Land LLC. It's along South Dakota Highway 38, a half a mile west of North Marion Road. Scott?
Thank you. Scott Anderson, Planning Director, and I will go over the staff report and show you a couple of pictures. So this area, if you'd move it to the site plan, there we go. The request is to rezone approximately 8 acres, as shown in red here. It's zoned A1 agriculture right now, and the applicant's requesting to rezone this to C commercial. I inspected the site on end of June, and it is immediately adjacent to the South Dakota Highway Patrol and South Dakota DOT offices to the east. To the south of the subject property, there's a utility, there's electrical substation, and then the ADP processing facility, which is a large data warehouse facility, is located to the south. And to the north, that property is being developed as like large warehousing. There's a very large building that's being constructed there now. The property that's in gray in the city, so you can see it from the interstate. The property is approximately 1,900 feet from the intersection of Marion Road and Highway 38. So it's about 1,900 feet west of that intersection. And if you're familiar with that intersection, you'll know that that area has been developing. There's a new Walmart there, there's a new Aldi's, a gas station, a Starbucks. So, it's developing, it's all in the city limits, it's developing as you would assume it would for that busy of an intersection. So it was routed, and we worked with the city, and I met with the city staff and asked for their comments, which are included in your packet. They have indicated that this parcel is located in a Tier 3 growth area, which means that city services are projected to be available within approximately 16 to 25-year time horizon. And the Sioux Falls Public Works has stated that gravity sewer is not available to the property, and therefore the city is recommending that the rezoning be denied because it is located in that Tier 3 zoning or Tier 3 area, and that there are no city services available. So I have included those comments for your review, and it goes more fully explains that tier system and their annexation policy. So based on the comments that we received from the city and deferring to the city's request for denial, staff finds that the proposed rezoning request does not conform with the goals and policies of the city of Sioux Falls and recommends denial of rezoning 23-5 to rezone that property from A1 agriculture to C commercial. I guess I will tell you it's vacant right now. At one time it appears there was a home site on there. It's heavily wooded. I can show you the pictures. There's the rezoning sign. You can see it's very wooded. And if you want to continue, that's looking basically west on Highway 38. And then you can see the utility. This is looking south. You can see the electrical substation and then the large ADP data processing or data storage area. And this is looking further or straight east. You really can't see the highway patrol or the state DOT offices because of the trees, but that's standing in the approach and looking straight east. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have. And once again, deferring to the city's annexation and growth policy and recommending denial.
Any questions for him? Guess not at this time.
Okay.
Is the petitioner here? Will you please step forward and state your name and address, sir?
My name is Tad Fegan. Our address is 47993 252nd Street, Garrettson, South Dakota. Is that what you wanted, my home address, or?
Yes.
Yep. So what we're hoping to do with the land is we're located right now on West 12th Street, Western Housing, and we've had so much trouble with vandalism and thievery. After 29 years, we're looking to relocate up there by the Highway Patrol, trying to curb some of that problems we've had. The city has seemed not to be able to control it. We just came into work this morning. It had graffiti over two of our brand new houses. It's strictly a retail sales lot. Nobody will live there. It'll just strictly be for selling our homes like we are now on West 12th Street. And that's why we're looking to rezone it. As far as I had talked to the city last fall, and seemed like they were in agreement if we did our own holding tank for septic or for sewer, and the city water is just north of the property, went out to the SDN building, that they would be kind of willing to work with us. And then at the last minute, they decided not to work with us on rezoning this and developing it into a sales lot for mobile homes and modular homes. So that's what we're looking to do, is just relocate. We've been on West 12th Street 29 years, and it's just getting so tough to deal with going to work. And we've put fences up, they've cut our fences, they've cut our padlocks on the back of our trucks, stole generators. It's just been an ongoing problem, more in the last 6 to 7 years, than in the previous 20, but it's just every day it's something new. It seems like you get to work and this door is kicked in or this is cut apart. And so we are looking to relocate is why we're looking to rezone that, so. Anybody have any questions or?
Any questions for him?
As I say, we'd be more than willing to connect to the city once they get out there, whatever the city requires us, because they had talked about that last fall too, was drafting a letter that I would sign saying, once city service is available, I would connect, and I'm like, yes, no problem, I can do that, and so, Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the audience care to speak to this item? Please step forward, state your name and address.
My name's Paul Sunderman. I represent the family, or my family. We're have a purchase agreement with TAD and Western Housing to purchase this. Just a few points I'd like to bring up. That area is the way I see it, is a real mixed-use area right now. You have a Walmart, as Scott said, implement dealership, the Lions Eye Bank. There's a flax processing facility out there. So I really think their business would fit well out there. Tad had told me that for as far as his office goes, it's just like two people. So either a septic or a holding facility, holding tank should work really well. And he's willing to do the conditional use where as soon as services are available, he would hook up. And, our family, we allowed the city to run a water line through our property, to service SDN Communications, many years ago. Granted an easement, we never got any compensation for that. I just think it would be a good fit for the area. One other thing, I was at a meeting last spring, late winter, early spring. There was a dog kennel just to the west of 2-3 miles west of us. And you guys, the joint council agreed that they could run this dog kennel off of a septic system out there. So I really don't see where this is much different than that as far as the use. So any questions?
Any questions for him? It's not.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to address this item? Can you address this from the city? I'm looking at you and you're looking at me.
Fletcher Lakehawk, urban planner, City of Sioux Falls Planning and Development Services. So our recommendation is to deny. We did meet with or talk to the applicant and their attorney in the past and explain that the way that we could do this is looking at annexing the property, rezoning it, going through a future land use amendment. They've worked with our Public Works Department to identify where sewer is available and how to construct that. Maybe they need to continue to work with our Public Works Department to see if they would support a different way of doing it. But when they asked what our position would be, where we could require them to annex, we said, it's not currently in the ordinance where we can require you to annex, but when you are abutting the city and you're asking for a rezoning, we can make the recommendation to deny because there is a process for this. So being a Tier 3 area, this land should remain rural until services are available. If, they want to move forward and annex into the city and go through, and figure out how to pay for the infrastructure needed in order to bring it up to city standards, then there's, that's recommended in our comprehensive plan, which we included in the memo to Planning Commission. And to address the conditional use permit for the kennel to the west, it was a conditional use in the ag district. It wasn't a specific, rezoning adjacent to the city. So there are differences between the two. So this does make sense for commercial in this area, but the way they should do it, and the reason our recommendation is deny it, is if they want to pursue it, then they should annex and go through the process through the city.
Anybody have any questions for him? Thank you. Anyone else care to address this item? Commissioners?
Madam Chair, could Tad come back up to the podium? Tad.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, what we just heard now, what are your feelings about that?
It's, with a small business owner like myself, it's gonna be not feasible. They originally said just the sewer alone would be like 95,000 to put in. And they said, the highway patrol's right beside, they said, well, that runs the wrong direction, and I'm like, I know T, that has nothing to do with T, but T had a bunch of housing that went in, and they all had to put in holding tanks because T couldn't get it out to them quick enough. And they, T said, no problem, and once T was ready, everybody hooked up. Like I say, as a small business owner, it's unfeasible for me to stay where I'm at and not to move. It's either shut the business down and do something different. Like I say, I just can't go on the way it is. And like I say, and we looked at property everywhere, all the way down to the Worthing exit. That puts us in, into Lincoln County, and that's just too far for me. I live at Garrettson, so it's gonna add 30 minutes of commute every day to me. We looked up by Baltic. I mean, we looked everywhere. And a lot of it, again, was so expensive, there was no way that I could justify moving my business until we found this property. And it, like I say, it's getting tough to get on and off at 12th Street in the morning, with our houses and stuff. And so it's close to 90, it's close to 29. It was just like a perfect fit, if we could make this happen. We would we'd leave what we plan to do is leave all the trees on the perimeter so it still looks like a farm site, and then put our modular homes and manufactured homes in the middle. And so I thought that would really, dress up the area, because like I say, right now it looks pretty rough. But like I say, I have a vision, like I say, we'd leave all the perimeter trees and, not just wipe everything out, and that would really add some beauty to that corner for now, because if it's not gonna happen for 15 to 25 years, that's gonna be an eyesore for 15 to 25 years, with the trees and stuff, everything there, so, but yeah, so it's hard for me to hear the city say, this ain't feasible, when the highway patrol is right beside me, right beside the land, and there's a cement building coming up north of me that's the size of this building, if not bigger, right on the interstate. So I'm just like, it's frustrating, but,
Do you have security cameras at your present location?
yes.
And
They always have hoodies on, they got their heads down. I have a picture on my phone yet of a guy that stole a ladder and a battery charger from us, looks right up at the camera. I got that to the Sioux Falls PD. They never did catch him. He had all kinds of tattoo markings. Perfect picture. I still have it on my phone. Yeah, that's a little frustrating, So
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Commissioners, any further comments? I'll entertain a motion if we have,
Oh, Madam Chair, I was just
Go
gonna
ahead.
ask, if we don't deny it, is there any restrictions or anything on there? Or is it just a approval, just to rezone it then, right?
Scott, can you address
Just
that?
either approval or denial of rezoning, right?
That's correct. It's either approval or a denial.
Yeah.
I suppose you could continue it if you needed more information. That's also an option. And I just will, I guess I want to make sure that both planning commissions know that while the applicant has indicated that they're amenable to some kind of like an agreement, it's been determined by the U.S. Supreme Court that you can't do conditional rezonings, so you can't encumber them with an agreement on a rezoning. That's like a tit for a tat then. If you agree to do this, then we'll rezone your property. So that's the issue with, not entering into an agreement to, like a pre-annexation agreement at this point. And it wouldn't be, any kind of a pre-annexation agreement would have to be with the applicant and the city. They could do that at a later date, but it can't be part of the rezoning. So just so you're clear.
Scott, one more question for you, if I may. Just a point of clarification, just for myself. If this is rezoned, it's not necessarily specific to Western Housing. We're actually rezoning the parcel, correct? This could be.
That's correct. They're
It's specific to the
rezoning it to
parcel.
commercial, and if the deal was to fall through, the property owner could sell it to a gas station, offices, a retail business, a bar. Any of the uses that we would allow in the C commercial through either as a permitted use or special permitted, or they could apply for conditional uses. So, and I think, you need to keep that in mind. The applicant has indicated they've been at their site for 29 years, but, they could decide in 2 or 3 years that, this isn't the location for them, and they move on, and that property will stay zoned commercial. So,
Madam Chair, Scott, I have another question. There is no conditional use permit that would allow this business to exist.
not in the A1 agriculture zoning. No.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify, so thank you.
Okay, any other questions for him?
Okay.
Thanks, Scott. Commissioners?
Madam Chair,
Becky?
as much as I would like to be able to say, I agree, it appears to be a great place for this business, I think with the City of Sioux Falls input, I'm not comfortable approving it, so I will move for denial.
Do I have a second?
Madam Chair, I really do struggle with this one because I do feel this is a great place. However, if I look at this from another standpoint and think that, like Scott said, could this be a gas station? Not to ever think that anyone would want to, for lack of a better term, pull a fast one and come in with one business and put in another. I don't think that's the intent at all. But if we just look at this as truly what it is and rezoning a parcel, it feels that the appropriate venue or the appropriate avenue is probably annexation. So I guess with that stated, I'll second.
Thank you. At this time, I have a motion and a second for the rezoning of 23-05, and this is a motion for denial. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. On the county side, as a denial.
All right, on the city side, we have a motion for denial of this item.
Madam Chair, could I ask a quick question of council? On the city side, we're always told to make our motions in the affirmative and then vote yea or nay based on that. Because the city has approved a denial, so to speak, or said yes to a denial, if we do an approval and it were to not pass that way, does that constitute a split vote, or is that still?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's appropriate for you to phrase it in the affirmative. I still think that it would be, just a second, let me.
Just do it.
Will you please come up to the mic, sir, and then tell us who you are?
Paul Binkford, Assistant City Attorney for Sioux Falls. Mr. Johnson, I would agree with you that we do our motions in the affirmative, and so if you phrased your motion in the affirmative, even though it was phrased differently by the county, I still think that we'd be fine in terms of it would not be different decisions by the city and the county. So very good question, thank you.
Very appreciate it, Paul. Madam Chair, based on that, I would move to approve item 4 for purposes of discussion.
All right, do I have a second on that?
Second.
All right, further discussion.
Madam Chair, much like the comments from the county, it is unfortunate that the zoning would stay irregardless of its current intended use or future use, and then without the the more formal services being available, it would not be appropriate for commercial zoning in this tiered location of the comprehensive plan. So unfortunately, I'll be voting against the approval.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'll just add, a lot of times properties can look like good locations on the surface. This certainly seems to be one here for this business, but unfortunately, a lot of times there's a lot of things that one can uncover, and the lack of city services here is certainly one of those that's been uncovered throughout this process. I'm always happy when these issues arise in the purchase agreement phase prior to closing. So I'm glad that it's being handled right now. But at the end of the day, I think the right process here is the voluntary annexation process. And I think that the applicant needs to work with the engineers, Public Works, to figure out the best way to make a voluntary annexation work. Because I think that's what will ultimately be best for this property. Also, I get concerned too with the possibility of potentially selling in the future and possibly switching hands and not being used for the specific use that we've talked about tonight. So I will also be voting no on this item.
Make sure your mic is on. So speak into the microphone.
Any further discussion? All right, then I will call for a vote. All those in favor of approving item number 4, please respond with yes. All those opposed, same sign.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, our motion does not carry.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 5. This is the zoning text amendment 23-04 to amend the 2002 revised joint zoning ordinance for Minnehaha County and the City of Sioux Falls to add vacation home / short-term rental regulations. Scott?
Thank you. Scott Anderson again. You may recall that this is something that we have been discussing. We've had some general informational discussion with the joint commissions, and I have prepared an ordinance based on a proposed ordinance amendment based on what was discussed at our joint meetings. Just for a point of clarification, I want to make sure that remind the commissions that the county has already adopted a short-term rental ordinance, and now we are moving on to our joint area. And so that being said, let me outline what is being proposed. So there are several zoning districts within our joint area that we would be proposing to amend, and we would be creating this as a permitted special use, which would mean that if they met the criteria that's outlined, and I'll go over that criteria, there are 6 things. If they meet these 6 things, then it would be permitted. And we are proposing to amend the A1 Agriculture District, the RR Rural Residential District, the RS-1, the Residential District, the RS2 Residential District, the RD Residential District, the RA-1 Residential District, and the RC Recreational Conservation District. And then, in addition to that, we would be amending Article 24, which is the definitions, and we would be adding a definition for short-term rental, vacation home. So vacation home rental, short-term rental. So let me go over the 6 criteria that you would need to meet in order to be considered as a permitted special use. So number 1, the maximum occupancy shall not exceed 3 people per bedroom. Number 2, the vacation home rental or short-term rental shall register with the state of South Dakota as a vacation home. Number 3, the minimum off-street parking requirements shall be 1 parking space per guest bedroom. Number 4, the contact information for the owner and any manager of the vacation home or short-term rental shall be provided to the planning department. Any changes in ownership or management shall require new contact information be submitted to the planning department. Number 5, the contact information for the owner and manager shall be clearly posted both inside and outside of the vacation home rental or short-term rental. Number 6, the county planning department shall send written notice of the proposed vacation home rental or short-term rental application to the owners of all property located within 500 feet of the property involved. The written notice shall be sent to the Sioux Falls Planning Department. If any property owner so notified files a written objection within 14 days of the mailing, the applicant shall apply for a conditional use permit. So that would be how we would handle that, and this is the same language that we use for temporary uses. So it mimics pretty much identically how we handle temporary uses in the joint area. So that being said, we are amending, as I stated before, all of those districts, and it would be a permitted special use in each of those districts if it meets these 6 criteria. If it doesn't meet the 6 criteria, they would need to apply for a conditional use permit to move forward with their request for a short-term rental. I'd be glad to answer any questions. I think there's some people, I know there's people in the audience that would like to also address this.
Any questions for Scott?
Scott, I've got one for you. What does it mean for vacation home rentals that are currently operating in this area? Do they have to immediately come to you and request it?
So not immediately. We've done some research. There are 3 since 2016. We've approved 3 in the joint area, and I am working with the state's attorney, and we would be looking at basically ratifying those conditional use permits as vacation home rental.
Madam Chair, I have a question. Go ahead, Eric.
Sorry. And the neighbors don't have the opportunity to object to
Well,
this?
but they have had the opportunity when we approved them as bed and breakfasts.
Okay,
So,
very good. Thank you.
John?
Yes, could you talk about what criteria would be involved in the conditional use permit application and review?
well, we have a standard, I would just refer you back to the conditional use permit that we approved on the consent calendar. There's specifically 6 criteria that we use, and I don't have them right off the top of my head, but basically you're looking at, well, let me grab one, I can tell you what they are. So there is set criteria that we evaluate for every conditional use permit. Number 1, the effect on the use and enjoyment of other properties in the surrounding area for uses already permitted and upon the property values of the surrounded area. Number 2, the effect of normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area. Number 3, we look at utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities that might need to be provided to that site or already are provided. Number 4, we look at off-street parking and loading requirements. Number 5, we look at Are there measures that are being taken to control offensive odors, fumes, noise, dust, vibration, and lighting, inclusive of lighted signs, so that none of them would constitute a nuisance? And then number 6, we look at the health, safety, and general welfare of the public, and we look at how that use compares or fits into the comprehensive plan. So those are just 6 criteria. That's the start of what we would use to evaluate. Certainly we are not limited on what we can use to evaluate. So we're open to a conditional use permit, basically opens the floor for you as the planning commission to evaluate any other criteria that you so feel that might be appropriate.
So those are the criteria. The regulations are the ones you mentioned as far as number of parking spaces or the number of people in a bedroom. Those are regulations.
That's
versus
correct.
These
That's correct.
criteria.
So, for example, let's say they have, one of the criteria is that they would need to have 1 parking space per guest bedroom. And let's say they have 8 bedrooms, but they only have 6 parking spaces. So knowing that they can't meet that criteria, if they wanted to move forward, they could apply for the conditional use permit and explain to us and to you as the planning commission why 6 parking spaces would be satisfactory.
What about the issue with a neighbor who would indicate that their use and enjoyment of their own home would be adversely affected by the short-term rental?
Well, then they have 14 days to submit their concerns to us, and that is, it indicates that they have 14 days to file a written objection to me, the planning department, or the county planning, and then it would then we would let the applicant know that they would need to apply for a conditional use permit. And then you, as the appointed board planning commission, would make the determination based on testimony given by all parties, what is truly the impact that would have on the neighborhood, and is it really affecting the enjoyment and property values? Those are all the decisions that you're entrusted to make.
All right, thanks.
Okay, anybody else have any questions for him? Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that would care to address this item? Please state your name and address.
Tyler Childress, right out 47677 Silver Creek Road. I'm pretty involved inside of this world, rentals in general, whether it's a short-term rental, a long-term rental, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. There's quite a few different definitions of kind of what the city has versus what the county has. It's very interesting if you head down to the city and you grab one of their applications for a rental, and it specifies whether it's a short-term rental, 6-month rental, 8 rental, it's all the same process. The city staff has recommended a change to this particular ordinance already. And I think it's coming forward next meeting if it goes forward here. I think it's very important to kind of understand that there is precedent set on the South Dakota Supreme Court level that talks about that Airbnb and VRBOs are a residential use. So there are previous court cases less than 18 months ago that discuss this. An allowed use inside of these zoning districts, let's take A1 Egg, for example, it already allows for a single family use. A single family is defined as less than three unrelated people. So let's say you have mom, you have uncle, you've got daughter, you've got whoever. As long as there's 3 unrelated people, it's already allowed inside of this. So I'd like some clarification if this is for a non-single family use is what we're talking about, or is it for a single family use? Because we already allow that inside of zoning ordinances for single family. On a state level, there are 4 different classifications for a license. There's a bed and breakfast license that's different, then a vacation home is different. There's 4 different classifications. So what would say if someone was approved through the state, was operating, and then this came forward? You know, how would that look? How would that see? You know, is there any sort of grandfatherness to this or any sort of process for that? Also, if a complaint comes in, we have to kind of understand there's going to be one person, maybe 2, maybe 3 handling these complaints. My concern is if there's not a proper system of complaints, it'd be one person's opinion of how to move forward. And that's maybe not just for this particular one, but in general, you know, is there a process? Let's say a neighbor, for example, says that one of the tenants had a camper inside there. Well, if we look inside of the county ordinances, it allows for a camper inside there. So I think it's very important to just understand, you know, the city's position, and these are future properties heading into the city. So we're in the joint area. So one abutting the city. It's the same process we had in the previous one where the gentleman looking for a Western housing inside there. If the property was in the same area and they had short-term rental inside the area, if he annexed inside there, the rules would change. So I just think it's very important is in these growth areas, maybe there's different rules, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, as far as these go. Thank you.
Madam Chair, could we ask the attorney if that was an accurate statement? I'm looking at some minutes with regards to the comment about the South Dakota Supreme Court. And what I see here is Commissioner Kipley asked Tyler Childress if he was aware that the Supreme Court case that he referenced was not specific to ordinances and was answering a question in regards to restrictive covenants. So I don't know if he said the same thing or if it's different, but I think it would be important if there was some clarification from the legal counsel about that.
Can one of you address that, please?
Paul Bingford with the City Attorney's Office. Mr. Paulson, what was, I'm sorry, the question in terms of what he said in terms of you're looking for the accuracy?
Well, he was stating that he was in disagreement with the Supreme Court decision, or maybe conversely, he was saying that the Supreme Court said that what he was saying was the case. And I was referencing minutes from the February 27th meeting where I believe that same argument was brought up. And that's when Commissioner Kipley had provided the response that I read. And you can look at it if you'd like.
Sure, if I could do that, that'd be great.
Right there on the bottom.
In the meantime, is there anyone else who would care to address this item? Please state your name and address.
Good evening, happy Monday, Chad Tyson, 2701 South Phillips, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 57105. As I stated, my name is Chad Tyson. I have been a resident of this great county, Minnehaha County, for more than 25 years. I've spoken at previous joint jurisdiction meetings, and so I will keep my comments very, very brief. So I'd ask you to consider this. Is this proposed short-term ordinance helping more people to obtain home ownership and allow current homeowners to utilize their property how they legally can? Or is this proposed ordinance going to impose increased limitations, increased restrictions on these homeowners? Will it cause these homeowners to utilize more of their time, more of their resources, more paperwork, more headaches for something that is, in my opinion, currently streamlined and very simple? I would ask you to listen to the homeowners, stakeholders, as they are the ones that are going to be affected by this. They are the experts in this area, and they have a very vested interest and have, in my opinion, a very good understanding of that. I would ask you to seek understanding of their needs and concerns and their goals, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Please step forward, state your name and address.
Good evening. I'm Christina Hubler. I live at 47648 Sorrel Street. Just wanted to touch base on a couple things with the short-term rentals this evening. I live in a pretty small community, about 20 houses or so, and a majority of us have lived out there for 10, 20, 30 plus years. With the discussion of the short-term rentals, this has caused a great deal of anger. And I believe that when somebody comes forward and requests for a conditional use permit, I realize that the neighbors within 500 feet are notified, which I think is fabulous. However, if those neighbors are coming forward right away during the public meeting for the conditional use permit and they're against it, as you guys vote as a majority for yay or nay, you know, if you have enough neighbors coming up and saying, no, we don't want this in our neighborhood, is that going to be taken into consideration, whether it's in city limits or outside of city limits? My concerns is that we live in Minnehaha County. We're outside of city limits, so when it comes to noise disturbances, emergencies, anything, you know, we rely on our township volunteers. We can't just call the police department and have them come out. We have to have the sheriff come out. Well, a lot of times if there is disturbances, they don't care because it's not an emergency. And I understand there's more important things too, you know, for them to focus their attention on. And so I do ask that with the conditional use permits and the short-term rentals, you know, that the process is crystal clear, that there isn't any gray, especially when it comes to being inside of city limits and outside of city limits. And as far as like the consequences, if your person that owns the home is not following by the rules and regulations, that there should be something that is done instead of just a verbal warning or a fine. You know, if the person continues to disobey and break the rules, then there should be serious consequences. As time has had it, we've had a problem and it's going on 7+ months. Nothing has been done. And I sure hope that going forward, once everything is set in place, that it's taken seriously. And so us that are in like the small neighborhoods are, let's say for instance, Crooks or Baltic, that, you know, we don't have a police department and we rely on the sheriff, that things are just taken serious. And that's all I ask. So I appreciate your guys' time tonight. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is John Beck. I live at 47645 Sorrel Street. Of the 6 items that Scott Anderson mentioned tonight about the vacation home rental and short-term rental, one of the items he said that if somebody has a complaint, it can be filed within 14 days. My question is, what happens after the complaint is filed? I'm going to read something here. It says, with the complaint process, there's a process that already exists. I need your help to understand this. When the conditions of a conditional use permit are not being met, the public can and does contact the planning department. This will start a review process on the complaint, which can lead up to revocation of the conditional use permit and legal enforcement of the zoning ordinance. My concern is, and you all know what my issue is with all of this, some people operate businesses for over 6 months and nothing is being done that I hear about. So we have all these rules. Number 1, on the vacation home short-term rental, maximum occupancy shall not exceed 3 people per bedroom. How is that going to get enforced? No, maybe along that same lines with the 3 people per bedroom, maybe it should be a limit per house and not bedroom. What if the house has 10 bedrooms? You could have 30 people in there. And if the house takes up the majority of the lot, how are you going to park all those vehicles on that lot? And a tangent off of that is, how are we going to identify the parking areas on the lot. You know, I'm getting pretty technical and detailed on this because how are you going to know if 10 vehicles can fit on the lot? And some of them may have to go out onto the street and park. I don't know how that works. So part of my question is, of these 6 items that were mentioned, how are they going to be enforced? I don't understand that. Is item number 5. The contact information for the owner and manager shall be clearly posted both inside and outside of the vacation home rental, short-term rental. Well, if it's not posted, who's going to enforce it? Who's going to make sure that it gets posted? What if there's an emergency that comes up and that party or those people haven't put contact information out there? What if this is a life-death situation? Item number 6 on that list was applicants of the short-term rental of all property located within 500 feet of the property involved. Is 500 feet really far enough distance to cover? You know, there are items such as noise and other types of pollution out there. Loud noise travels a lot farther than 500 feet. So in summary, my comments here is, I think the 6 items that are listed don't go far enough. I know every project is different, and a conditional use permit may need to happen on some places, but shouldn't we consider a conditional use for every one that applies for a short-term rental or vacation home? Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. State your name and address.
Lucas Strom, 27269 467th Avenue, T, South Dakota. I guess I am a dual resident. I live in South Dakota, but I also live in San Juan, Puerto Rico. I was a property owner of 2 properties here. One was a rental, one was my house that I lived in, which was going to become a rental property. But some time ago, I actually caught wind of some discussion as far as short-term rentals go, and I decided instead of keeping my properties and keeping them as rentals, I sold them. I have since bought 6-plex in Puerto Rico, San Juan, Puerto Rico. I'm actually looking to buy a second property now, San Juan, Puerto Rico. Airbnb is not a new concept. Airbnb has been around for years and years and years. It's not something that's just creeped up. And as a son of a land developer, my dad had his development a mile west of T. I know that when people move out into the country, they buy 1 acre, they buy 2 acres. They think they're living in the country. They don't think about future expansion. And so sometimes what happens is they buy that acre, they buy that 2 acres, and they don't think they're going to have neighbors. Pretty soon, the city starts reaching out there. Just like you guys do future planning, the people that are buying properties need to do future planning as well when they're buying that property. Whereas I'm not just trying to hit against the people that are property owners that are dealing with this now. The fear, I think, is most of the time when we look at things like this, people reject change. We're creatures of habit. So when change creeps up on us, we don't like it. And so we start looking at the extreme sides of this rather than sometimes looking at it from the standpoint of a property owner who's got property rights, just like they are a landowner who has property rights. I'm all for government. Government is definitely needed. But sometimes I think because of complaints, things like that, we overstep our boundaries. And so the people who are property owners who have the exact same rights and should have the same rights, because this is classified under a residential, not a commercial use type property, I think for every law that is imposed, we take away a right from that property owner. In the same respect, the people that are opposed to this need to think about it from their side as well. So the government decides that they want to impose some new ordinance or that type of thing that's going to affect them. They need to think about it in both respects, because when it comes up and it's affecting them, then they're going to be here fighting for their side as well. So, I mean, we need to look at this from both sides. and think about it as somebody that's bought a property and is an investor. And I think that the city is going to find that they're losing some value, and they're losing some, we end up taking away rights that should be extended to the property owner, and already are. Thank you.
Commissioner Paulson, Paul Bangford with the City Attorney's Office. I just wanted to respond to your earlier question. The case that I believe is being referred to is Wilson versus Maynard. It's a 2021 decision by the South Dakota Supreme Court, and it addresses restrictive covenants. It does not address ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Tony Bachman, 48069 267th Street, Brandon, South Dakota. I'm a broker at Coldwell Banker Realty, Empire Realty, and I just was asked if I would come in and just make a quick statement in reference to this. I know that there's a lot of negative things that we've been talking about, and there's a lot of negative concerns, but I also know that there's a lot of positives. The positives are is you're seeing a number of homes that in Sioux Falls that have been rehabbed, rejuvenated. You've had people that are investing money in these properties, and you especially see it in the core part of the city. And I think that that is a good thing for the neighborhood, for the people that live in that neighborhood. I understand there's sometimes that people, they have some concerns about some of the extenuating circumstances with noise and parking, and I realize that this is all stuff that you're talking about, but I also know if you over-regulate this, you will squash it, just like it was just previously stated. And I think that it has helped with values for a lot of these neighborhoods, which you have a lot of people that have been longtime residents, and I don't see that as a negative for them. That's a positive for them. So I just think that there's a lot of good things that come of this and has come of it. I know that it's, as of the last couple of years, it's been a hot topic. Sioux Falls has been on the forefront of all this in South Dakota. And so, yeah, if we're talking about doing some regulations, but within reason, probably light-handed as opposed to heavy-handed, where we're trying to deal with extreme cases of, things, and yeah, let the chips fall where they may. But I just know that on the bulk of this, I think it's been a positive for the city, neighborhoods, and many of these homes that have just would have otherwise went in disrepair or just continued to be just rentals that it was, I don't like using the word slumlord, but was just say it's someone who's owned a home, they're not going to do anything about it. So I think there's a lot of places that have benefited from this. So thank you.
Anyone else before I close the floor?
Tina Beck, 47645 Sorrel Street. I just want to talk about, again, like the number in the bedroom, 3 per bedroom. So if you have a 10-bedroom house, you're going to have 30 people. At what point does something become an event and it's no longer just a residential living? And because if you got a 7-bedroom house, you got 21 people staying there at any given time. Find me a house in Sioux Falls that has 30 people that live in it. 20 people that live in it. Sioux Falls has a limit on the number of unrelated guests that can live in a long-term rental. Yet these short-term rentals can have 30 different people in them and none of them related. Is it possible that you could put a minimum number of days that it's rented? 7 days, 14 days, 30 days instead of 1, 2, or 3 days? And the noise, how do you deal with it? You guys, what are you going to do when complaints are coming in with noise? We had probably, I don't even know how many people in the illegal rental behind us that on multiple occasions, we've heard they're partying inside our house. All of our windows are closed while we're trying to sleep. I've got a camera on the very back of my house. If you would like to hear the noise that was made all weekend, I can bring it up here and put it up on the microphone for you. It's loud. So then I will also ask, is there going to be a formal way when somebody's not following the permit? So, I mean, at this point, the rental out by us, it's not housing families, it's housing large groups. And party buses have been seen out there, so, I mean, what is this house? Thank you.
Hello, Sarah Benson, 1515 East 30th Street. So I'll make this quick. It sounds like you guys are wrapping up. I just want to say that I was one of the first homes to do Airbnb in the city. I started Airbnb in 2015 after travels abroad. It worked really well for our family because my mom became a traveling nurse and we had a home within the family for 30 years. We really wanted to keep it in the home. So we kind of transitioned into that. We were able to keep the home in our family, and it allowed me to save up money and move into the home I moved now. And then ultimately open a business called the Hello High downtown. So I just want to say, as far as entrepreneurship and somebody younger, that there are some success stories, and we're keeping money in Sioux Falls. I'd just also like us to respect the autonomy of individuals. That granted, there should be regulations, and I think a lot of those things can happen, but look out for us too, because I think that you'll see that people spend the money in town, and there's ways to go about it to make sure that everyone's happy. Cheers.
So, Madam Chairman, I think it behooves us to, I need to make sure that everyone's clear in the audience, and certainly you already know this, but we're not proposing regulations for inside the city limits. We've heard testimony about revitalizing downtown neighborhoods, and this is not the board that is charged with that. This is we're talking about the area that is outside of the city limits within the joint jurisdiction of the city of Sioux Falls. So I just want to make sure everyone's clear, because we've heard 3 people testify about the necessity for this to occur within the city of Sioux Falls, and that is going to be an issue that the city of Sioux Falls is going to have to deal with, and is not on the board, not to be discussed tonight by you. We do not have any authority within the city of Sioux Falls.
Okay.
Avery Del Grasso, 47640 Sorrel Street. I'll make it brief. Look, I'm young. I like amenities. I've partied in Airbnbs myself. That's what you do in college sometimes. And I like citywide progress and growth as much as the next guy. But likewise, I don't think we should hamstring too much progress, as what's been stated. But when we've straight up had an Airbnb continuing to operate despite a cease and desist since February, I think some enforcement changes should be considered. I'd implore you at a minimum to help provide good citizens with the tools to appropriately handle bad actors that may abuse the system. That way we can still progress and respect the neighborhoods. Thanks.
Okay.
Dwayne Wegman, 47634 Sorrel. Same problem, same meeting. I do have a question about this, addressing the complaint procedure. All this pertains to the regulation, or the, let's see what I want to say here, the conditional use permit, which hasn't even been applied yet for this particular property. And if we can't have problems addressed prior, what's going to happen down the road? I mean, to me, the system has failed before it even got started. Another thing I would like to bring up is it doesn't mention the use of a camper brought onto the property. I believe it addressed a mobile home, but in the past, this particular property on Slip Up Creek has had a camper brought in on a weekend. Now, I understand you can have a camper on your private property, but when it's brought in by somebody that's renting the Airbnb or whatever you want to call it, has this been addressed in our notes? Because I don't understand anything being done on that. And that's something I think that should be considered. Can people bring in a camper? Because frankly, I got room for about 4, and this looks like a good opportunity. So, anyway, unfortunately, 7 months, it's been a lot of frustration, and it looks like it's going to continue, so thank you.
Macy Del Grasso, 47640 Sorrel Street, previously 47645 Sorrel Street. I would just like to say I have lived out there for 24 years, and I moved right across the street because I liked living out in the country. I liked knowing my neighbors. I remember growing up, I could just walk to my next door neighbor's house and play with their dog. I knew my neighbors. My son, if this happens where we have a vacation home right behind his grandparents' house, I won't feel safe with him playing out in the yard or walking over to the next door neighbor's house because I don't know what's going to happen. So I would just like to take that into consideration, that growing up out there, I knew who was my neighbors. My grandson, or my parents' grandson, my son, I'll be scared for him playing and not knowing what's going to happen. You hear a lot about kids being taken just from their own yards, and it's a scary thought, and I never thought I'd have to think of that where I live. Thank you.
Scott's Walk, 47646 Slip Creek Road. I live right next door to the one house that is in question here. Such as this weekend, just so you all know, they came in on Thursday night. There was 4 or 5 pickups came roaring in about 9 o'clock. And from Thursday night until Sunday when they left, there was anywhere from 4 pickups to 9 to 10 pickups there. Friday night, I walked in the house about 9 o'clock to clean up, and I look out my front window, and I'm like, what's sitting there? Well, there pulls up about a 40-seat party bus. 19 guys come walking out of that house and climb in that bus and go off partying. Thought, okay, fine. Well, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I get woke up from fireworks. And yeah, and I know it was them because then I heard them walking up the driveway and talking. I mean, we live out there for the peace, hopefully for the peace and quiet. And since they've started renting that house, there has not been any peace and quiet. And every time you turn around, you're kind of looking to see who's coming, who's going. So as far as vacation homes, yeah, there's a place for them, but I just do not feel in a small community like that there is the place for that type of a rental. Thanks.
Christy Childress, 47677 Slip Up Creek Road. I get it. It's personal, even though it's not, right? This meeting isn't supposed to be personal, but it's turned personal against Tyler and I. I'm sure you guys would all agree on that. I guess my thing is, okay, hypothetical. You say this ordinance goes through and our neighbors get to decide what we do with our property, our home that we own, that we pay for. Then what's the next thing they get to decide? Do they get to decide when my kids can be on my driveway? Do they get to decide when my kids can go around on their driveway? You know what I mean? I just feel like it's overstepping a little bit, and I understand it's gone personal, and we're super easy to attack because there are 20 homes out there, and they think they should get to vote on anyone that comes in their neighborhood because that's them. They've been there forever. So no one should get to come in or go out without them saying something. Well, honestly, that's not how it is. So hypothetically, you pass this ordinance and restricts us from doing an Airbnb there, which that's all it is. And by the way, it's maybe one of the nicest properties out there. I don't know if you've been out there, but we paid a pretty penny for it. And fine, we'll sell it. And then do they get to vote on what the next person does with that property? Or what's Sioux Falls doing? Are you gonna go ahead and mandate every single house in Sioux Falls? You can't have an Airbnb there. You can't do that. You can't do long-term there. What's the big difference between a long-term being mandated and a short-term being mandated. Because guess what? A long-term can be a criminal, can be someone you don't want to live next to you. That's not mandated in Andy's Acres. Thanks.
Okay, if nobody else is going to speak, I'm going to close the floor. Commissioners?
Madam Chair, did you want this time for a general discussion?
Sure.
Couple things. First of all, want to thank Scott and his staff for working on this because I know it's been challenging. I think for us as planning commissions, it's also challenging when you hear the stories and you know they're real. And if you know someone who's experienced it, you know how it lasts and creates a peace of mind issue that is really difficult, if at all, to overcome. So that's part of the situation that we're trying to deal with. On a larger scale, there is a growing concern about short-term rentals developing across the country. Many communities are initiating new regulations because of the problems they're having. Maybe a few years off for us, but real in terms of action taken, primarily involving restricting the residential neighborhoods from the short stay rental situation. And as a result of that, I wonder if we shouldn't look at what opportunities we have within the confines of the joint jurisdiction area to do something that could be a model, a way to ensure that going forward, our larger community, the joint jurisdiction area, the county and the city are doing the right things and addressing and responding to the issues in such a way that it's something we depend on and know has been done and addressed, providing protection for the neighbors. And if there are opportunities identified through a planning process for those that want to provide them, they would know what those are too. And one thing I see in our criteria is a reference to the comprehensive plan. And because of timing of when the short-term rental wave started to develop, the comprehensive plan had already been completed. So there isn't a section of the comprehensive plan at this time devoted to what we need to know about short-term rentals. What are the metrics? What would the goals be? How do we know we're successful? What are we trying to adhere to? What are we wanting to make sure we're providing as resources? So going back to my thought about the joint jurisdiction area being a model, maybe we need to toughen up this ordinance or provide an extension so that we can do those things that I mentioned and bring forward the others that need to participate so it's done in a way that is a benefit to the entire community that we represent, city, county, and the joint jurisdiction area. I believe that approach would give us many advantages. I think in particular about what you told us, Scott, in terms of the number that we have, and I think it's 3, and they're B&Bs, which essentially means there's an owner around, which is the distinction between the short-term rental, which involves no one, or it's absentee landlord situation. And at least that's the way I understand it. I think that's accurate, isn't it?
No, let me clarify that. So we did some research, and it appears that there are 3 what I would call short-term rentals that we, in order to accommodate those property owners' request, we process them as Airbnbs. So that I can't tell you definitively whether the property owner resides on the property or not. I believe that they are short-term rentals, and we have 3 of them, so.
So that's what you're calling them, I guess. Is that right? Well, that's only 3. But my point was, if we enact something to prevent the addition at this time, to allow for a plan to come forward, would that benefit the issues that we've been hearing about this evening? Would it provide direction on a more significant level for the community-wide concerns? It seems like like I said, we have an opportunity, and if taken, it could be an opportunity to be a model.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
When I look at this too, I appreciate a model concept, but I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all that we can say, there is 100 guidelines, and if you check all 100 guidelines, yes, it fits, or it doesn't fit. And I say that because I think some Airbnbs, VRBO, whatever term you want to use, may be appropriate to have a fencing requirement, may be appropriate to have a tree requirement. I'm just throwing arbitrary things out there, but I don't think that we should say that everything has to have a fence and everything has to have so many trees and everything has to have X, Y, Z. I think that when we look at what we're trying to consider today, it's a base. It's a base to say, if you meet these criteria, you can have one, unless a neighbor brings forward a concern. And yes, I do hope that we as a panel listen to those concerns. And if there's concerns that can be addressed and, make the neighbors happy, make the owner, the operator happy, we go through the conditional use process and make those conditions of that conditional use. So I don't know what more to add to this to make it a true model, because I believe this is just guidance as a starting point. And if there are concerns, of a Airbnb that's operated maybe I don't know how to say it tactfully, but it has been an issue for the neighbors. I do hope that it's brought forth and addressed by us, by the planning staff. But if we don't have a mechanism to even say, yes, you can have an Airbnb, no, you can't have an Airbnb, how are we to say that they're in the wrong? How do we even enforce something that doesn't exist? So I guess with that said, I think these are great guidelines as a starting point, because they give us a mechanism to hear the neighbors, or to say, you know what, it's out in the middle of nowhere, it has ample parking, it isn't going to be a disturbance, yes, go ahead. So I guess that's my opinion.
Madam Chair, to that
Go
point,
ahead.
I want to ask, just to confirm what I understood you had communicated about criteria can be added to the ordinance in the future to include any new regulations that we would want to add, or additional conditions, or that could also apply on a case-by-case basis. Is that true?
So you do have the ability always to amend the zoning ordinance. So let's say you were to adopt the wording that's in front of you now, and a year from now, you've decided that all short-term rentals should really be painted red. So you could amend the ordinance to include that. You can amend the ordinance to include anything you'd like. Now, that is the criteria. So I sort of took your question as sort of a two-pronged question, but if they needed to apply for the conditional use permit, let's say we send out the notices, there's a neighbor that objects to the request, then they could come before the board and apply for the conditional use permit. When they apply for the conditional use permit, we have a hearing, and then, as Commissioner Ralston said, we can sort of suss out what the issues are, and maybe it is appropriate to put a condition that is going to appease both sides. Maybe that's a 6-foot fence. Maybe it's a security camera. You do have the option when it comes before you. If one was to come before you as a conditional use permit, you have the right to work out details with them. So I hope that answers your question. Yes, you can
thank you.
always amend the zoning ordinance, and yes, you can add conditions to a conditional use permit that might pacify the neighbors or meet their issues, that they brought up.
Okay, thanks.
Madam Chair, Scott, sorry, I wanted to follow on if I could. So we have a situation where property is posted and neighbor objects, they start the conditional use process. No matter what comes before the board, these bodies determine, yeah, we can't let this get approved. It's not going to get, they deny it. What happens then to tag or otherwise identify the property that you applied for it? We had to go through the conditional use, you were denied. You cannot do an Airbnb VRBO on this property. How is that identified?
Well, I suppose one of the ways is you have astute planning staff that monitor that. And I keep a log up here. That's number one. Number two, typically these things do not go unseen by neighbors, and neighbors are usually pretty quick to call us up and say, hey, this is occurring, and here's some pictures, or here's what I've noted. And so that then triggers us to start evaluating and monitoring it if once we know that there's an issue.
Very good. So it does get identified. Nope, they are not allowed to do this on this property. You can start taking evaluation action and refer it to people who can enforce it.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, any other questions for him? Okay, commissioners?
I guess, Madam Chair, since I'm the one who kind of made a stink before, I'll be the one to make a motion to approve the ordinance as drafted.
I second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second on the county side to approve the zoning text amendment 23-04. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes on the county side.
On the city side, I would entertain a motion for discussion purposes to approve item number 5, which is the zoning text amendment.
Madam Chair, I'll move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. Further discussion.
Madam Chair, if I could, we certainly live in a world that's very polarized, and vacation rentals is certainly one of those topics that people are very much so in support of or very adamantly against. Interestingly, it may sound a little vanilla, but I find myself somewhere in the middle on the issue. And I think on this issue, we need to find a way to meet that middle ground more often. I think this ordinance is a start to that. I don't think it's perfect. I think over the course of time, this ordinance will probably be flushed out, probably amended by this planning commission, and we'll get the opportunity to do that in the future. 500 feet's a pretty big distance away. I actually really think that a lot of these, especially at the beginning of time, are going to come before this body. I think we're going to see a lot of people, even within the 400-foot to 500-foot area, that are going to come and say, well, I just don't like these, and I'm just going to come and I want them to go through the CUP process. So I think we're going to get the opportunity to look at each property. And one of the things that I love about dealing with property is every single chunk of ground is unique, and it's got different characteristics, different neighbors, in a different environment. So this body will be able to take a look at those on a case-by-case basis. I think it's going to cause a lot of work for us, and I think this ordinance is really going to cause a lot of work for planning and zoning and enforcement. So I hope planning and zoning is up for that, because there needs to be a very much so strong enforcement mechanism in place. But at the end of the day, I think this is a start. I think there is a place for vacation home rentals, but I also think they need to be regulated. This ordinance starts off on a pretty good path for that regulation. So I'll be voting in support of it.
Other discussion?
Madam Chair, as I said, I think we'd benefit by having something stronger and have the benefit of planning time to bring forward the criteria that could help in that regard. But because it is a work in progress for us too, I'm going to support it so we can do that.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor of passing item 5, the zoning text ordinance, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, same sign. All right, our motion carries.
Any old business? New business?
I just wanted to also let both planning commissions know that our planning department, the county planning department, is going to start doing a overhaul or a review of our comprehensive plan. Our Envision 2035 plan was adopted 8 years ago. So we are going to be looking at updating that. And as part of that, we anticipate reaching out to all of our partners. So that it is a lot of municipalities, Del Rapids and Garrettson and Hartford and Crooks, so we will be reaching out to all of those, looking at maybe how their transition areas have changed over the last 8 years, how we deal with potentially building eligibilities, and is that still applicable, and how we're dealing with that density zoning. So I just we anticipate this to be probably a 1.5 to 2 year process, but we are starting on that. So I just wanted to give you a heads up, something to look forward to in the next year to 1.5 years that we'll be starting to work on that and bringing stuff primarily to the county planning, because it's the county planning, it's the county comprehensive plan. But we certainly anticipate reaching out to our partners, municipal partners, townships that we work with, and other organizations. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose?
And likewise on the city side, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we're adjourned.